few days back, I came across something I wrote in a journal about 10 years ago. It was about a conversation with my mother in which she talked about her childhood. Now, my mom was a child during World War II. Her father went to fight for the Allied forces, which meant my grandmother was effectively raising 3 children by herself during an international crisis on a limited budget. Times were tough. My mother described how the family's daily routine included listening to the radio station announce the latest list of soldiers who were dead or missing. Even if my grandfather's name wasn't on the list, there was the constant fear that someone would knock on the door with a telegram bearing bad news. My grandfather did return home, physically spent and emotionally traumatized, but he came home. We know, of course, that many families weren't as fortunate. My point in telling this story is that these events would be lost forever if someone didn't write them down. After my mom described her childhood experiences, I felt compelled to write everything I could remember. My mom has recorded her memories in writing as well. And we need to do this. People who were children during World War II are old people now, and we need to make sure the history they lived through does not die with them. We cannot rely on the history taught in schools, because the history taught in schools is frequently manipulated to suit an agenda. Think of what you were taught about the origins of Thanksgiving, the history of indigenous people in North America. The history that I was taught growing up in South Africa during apartheid was definitely whitewashed. Some school boards in the United States have been wanting to limit education about the Holocaust, or to teach opposing views, whatever that is supposed to mean. What I'm saying here is that we cannot preserve history only in history books. We need the stories of people who have lived through historic events. That includes our parents and grandparents, and it includes every single one of you. Because right now we are going through a major historic event. 20, 30, 40 years from now, how will the history books tell the story of the COVID-19 pandemic? Will they talk about how healthcare systems were pushed to the limit? Will they acknowledge that thousands of lives were lost because the pandemic was politicized in so many parts of the world? Will they mention today's generation of kids whose school lives were completely disrupted for 2 full years and counting? Do we want to rely on history books to tell the story accurately? I don't think we should. Governments control what is taught in schools, and there are varying opinions as to whether governments can be trusted. The true history, the history that counts, the history that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will really want to know, is how we are experiencing this time period ourselves. What are we going through? How do we feel? What are we afraid of? What are we learning? How has all of this been impacting us on a deep personal level? That is what should be recorded. I feel like this is a great time for everyone to be keeping a journal and writing down the things that are happening to us. Some things may seem insignificant now because we've gotten so used to them. For example, when I go swimming, I put on my mask before I go into the building. The staff at the sports center scan my QR code with my vaccine information, and they check my ID. I wear my mask to the poolside and take it off to swim, and when I'm done, I get out of the pool and immediately put my mask back on, and it stays on until I'm out of the building. This is normal to me. I think nothing of it. 10 years from now, when this is well behind us, it will probably seem very weird. Last year, when the pandemic was probably at its worst, I traveled internationally for essential reasons. The trip there and back involved self-isolation prior to departure, self-isolation when I got to my destination, a federally mandated 2-week quarantine in a motel when I got back, during which I received multiple phone calls and visits from quarantine enforcement officers, and a total of 5 COVID tests. Do I think anything of it? Not really. And when I travel next, I will be prepared to deal with whatever COVID protocols are in place. But looking at it objectively, it's kind of bizarre. It's definitely the kind of thing that should be recorded so future generations can look at it and go, what? So my challenge for you is to start a journal. If you can write in it every day, great. If you can't, just once or twice a week, write down what you did, anything out of the ordinary that happened to you, whether you felt a particular way. And if you have older family members, talk to them. Ask them questions about things they have lived through, and write or record what they say, because their history needs to be preserved. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. For more writing content, subscribe to this channel and check out my Instagram. Lots of great stuff is starting to happen over there. Keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you in the next video.